What if I told you one of hip-hop's wildest legends actually died and then came back to life in a morgue? A man so small in size, yet so larger than life, that every rapper who's ever crossed his path carries a story they still can't believe. Before Flavor Flav acted crazy, before ODB broke the rules, Bushwick Bill was the original tornado, tearing through hip-hop with chaos, comedy, genius, and pain. And that's only the beginning. Because Bushwick Bill wasn't just another wild figure in rap, he was a one-man storm system, unpredictable and unforgettable. A man who could crack a joke, quote scripture, start a fight, and deliver a legendary verse all in the same hour. He was chaos in a compact frame, a living contradiction, a walking miracle who defied logic, death, and the limits people tried to put on him. This is the man who took the stage at 3'8" but performed like a giant. The man whose verse on Mind Playing Tricks on Me still sends chills down the spine of hip-hop fans decades later. The man who turned trauma into art, madness into music, and pain into poetry. But behind the wild stories, the fights, the controversy, the headlines was a soul, wrestling with demons most people never survive. Poverty, violence, addiction, identity, faith. Bushwick didn't just face them, he lived them out loud, in real time, in front of the world. His life wasn't just a roller coaster. It was a crash, a resurrection, and a legacy written in scars. This is the story of Bushwick Bill, the man who the world tried to bury, but who refused to stay dead. Bushwick Bill's story doesn't begin in a recording studio or on a concert stage. It begins in chaos, real, raw, life or death chaos. Before he ever became the wild, unpredictable heartbeat of the Geto Boys, he was Richard William Stephen Shaw, a tiny breech-birth baby fighting to survive as he entered the world backwards, feet first, with doctors believing neither he nor his mother would make it. His first moments on Earth were a battle, and that would become the pattern of his entire life. Born in Kingston, Jamaica, raised in the poverty-stricken streets of Trenchtown, Bushwick, Bill entered life already defying the rules. His family escaped Jamaica's political violence in the early 1970 seconds, fleeing to America with 9 children and little more than hope. They settled in Brooklyn's Bushwick neighborhood, a place burning with crime, drugs, and the early spark of something new, something called hip-hop. While the streets outside were filled with danger, Bill found himself drawn to the culture exploding around him. Breakdancing, graffiti, the booming echo of sound systems inherited from Caribbean roots. But the world wasn't kind to a child his size. At 3 feet tall, Bill was mocked, bullied, underestimated. People saw a dwarf, never the fire that lived inside him. And when they pushed him, he pushed back, twice as hard. His small frame hid Popeye's strength, a fierce spirit, and a mind sharper than anyone realized. He survived the early crack epidemic, saw dead bodies on sidewalks, watched friends disappear into addiction and prison. But he also found something unexpected: faith. A movie called The Cross and The Switchblade changed him. Suddenly, this wild, angry street kid wanted to understand God. He studied the Bible with the same intensity most kids studied rap lyrics. By the time he hit his teens, he had left New York entirely, traveling to Minnesota to attend Bible college. And not only did he attend, he graduated at the top of his class, on track to become a missionary in India. Yes, Bushwick Bill, the wildest member of the Geto Boys, the same man who would later rap about horror, violence, and twisted psychology, was originally preparing to build schools and irrigation systems overseas as a servant of God. But destiny had a sharp turn waiting. Before leaving for India, he visited his sister in Houston. What he saw there changed everything. Cars shaking with bass, clubs thumping with southern sound, and a new kind of hip-hop energy that felt alive, bigger than life, bigger than anything he'd felt before. And Bill knew this was where he belonged. A chance walk into a club called the Rhinestone Wrangler became the doorway to his new life. A DJ noticed his dancing, another DJ saw his energy, and soon he was being introduced to a man who would alter the course of hip-hop forever. J. Prince, the founder of Rap A Lot Records. Bill became a hype man, then a member, then the voice and wild spirit of a group that would shake the entire industry, the Geto Boys. But the rise to fame didn't erase the darkness. Bill carried trauma, anger, faith, madness, and brilliance all tangled together. His story wasn't just about music, it was about survival. And soon, the world would witness just how thin the line between life and death could be for Bushwick Bill. Bushwick Bill's rise into hip-hop wasn't planned, strategic, or guided by any mentor. It was accidental, born from curiosity, boredom, and the kind of fate that only seems to strike those destined to live unforgettable lives. When he first entered the Rhinestone Wrangler, a Houston club packed with bass-heavy speakers and raw southern energy, he wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't trying to be a rapper. He wasn't even trying to get a job. He just wanted something to do. Yet within minutes, the entire room froze, watching this tiny Jamaican kid move across the floor with the charisma of a superstar. Locking, popping, breaking, the man could dance. Even more than that, he was magnetic. DJ Lonnie Mac noticed immediately. DJ Ready Red noticed even faster. Ready Red, who was from New Jersey and understood East Coast hip-hop deeply, saw something special in Bill and eventually moved in with him and his sister. Bill had no idea that this friendship would become one of the foundation stones of Southern rap history. At this point, the Geto Boys already existed, but the lineup was unstable, falling apart, shifting constantly. Jay Prince, the mastermind behind Rap A Lot, was still trying to build something solid. Bill joined the group not as a rapper, but as a hype man and dancer. No one, including Bill himself, thought he would ever touch the mic. But the streets of Houston had other plans. Bill was surrounded by rappers every day, by chaos, competition, egos, and personalities bigger than buildings. In that environment, voices either sharpened or disappeared. And Bushwick Bill had never been the type to disappear. The moment everything changed was during the creation of the Geto Boys' second lineup. Prince, Johnny C, and Jukebox were gone. Jay Prince recruited Willie D, a lyrical street general with a voice like a Punch and Scarface, a young, deeply intelligent writer with a dark mind and raw storytelling ability. And then there was Bushwick, the smallest man in the room, but the only one you couldn't ignore. On their groundbreaking independent album Grip It, On That Other Level, Bill rapped for the first time. His breakout moment was Size Ain't Shit, a song Willie D wrote for him, but Bill delivered it with such fire that fans instantly locked onto him. He didn't sound like anyone else. His high-pitched, unpredictable delivery, his wild energy, his comedic timing, it was like the voice of a cartoon villain in a horror movie, but real, raw, and street, and people loved it. Soon, he wasn't the hype man. He wasn't the dancer. He was Bushwick Bill, the third pillar of a group that was about to explode. Then came Rick Rubin, the legendary producer whose resume already included Run DMC, Beastie Boys, LL Cool J, and who would soon reshape the entire rock and rap world. Rubin loved the Geto Boys sound, but believed it needed polishing, restructuring, and a bigger push. But there was a problem. Their lyrics were too raw, too violent, too sexual, too real. Songs like Mind of a Lunatic, Gangster of Love, and Assassins were so extreme that major labels refused to distribute the record. Warner Brothers backed out, Geffen backed out. The media attacked them, calling their music a mix of NWA's violence and Two Live Crew's nastiness. The Geto Boys became public enemy #1 in hip-hop. And Bushwick Bill, tiny, chaotic, unpredictable, became the face of the controversy. Reporters wanted to talk to him. Activists wanted to ban him. Politicians wanted to blame him. And Bill loved the attention. He told the press their music wasn't fantasy, it was a mirror. A reflection of the streets. A reflection of America. If it's on the news, he said, why can't it be on a record? The Geto Boys were building a legacy, a cult following, and a sound that would define Southern hip-hop forever. But just when the group was rising, just when their names were finally reaching the national stage, Bushwick Bill's life would take the darkest, most unbelievable turn imaginable. A night of drugs. A moment of madness. A gun. A girlfriend. A scream. A shot. And the death of Bushwick Bill, followed by the most shocking resurrection in hip-hop history. He always said his mind was a battlefield. But on the 19th of June 1991, that battlefield finally detonated. Bushwick Bill had spent the entire day drifting in and out of a fog of Everclear, Crown Royal, gin, weed laced with PCP, and a hurricane of thoughts he couldn't outrun. He was 25, exhausted, spiritually cracked, and convinced the only thing left in life worth giving was his own death. To him, dying wasn't an escape, it was an insurance payout, a final chance to leave something behind for the people he loved. And that's when everything spiraled. When he got home that night, the world around him tilted. His heartbeat wasn't a rhythm anymore, it was a countdown. He picked a fight with his girlfriend, pushed her, screamed at her, begged her to do the one thing he couldn't bring himself to do. When she refused, he grabbed her 2-year-old child, held him near a window, and demanded she shoot him before he threw the boy. This wasn't rage. It was a man drowning. Then the gun fired. A flash. A scream. A sound that split his world in half. The bullet entered through his right eye, and in one violent instant, Bushwick Bill collapsed into eternity. The medics pronounced him dead, DOA. Time of death, approximately 4:35 a.m. A toetak, a metal drawer, a body bag cooling on a fluorescent morgue lights. But Bushwick Bill wasn't done. 2 hours and 45 minutes later, in a room filled with silence and the frozen faces of the dead, something impossible happened. His chest rose. His eyes opened well, one eye, and he realized he was staring at his own death certificate. He yanked the catheter out, stumbled out of the drawer, and screamed at the morgue staff, who, in pure terror, ran like they had seen a ghost. Because they had. Bushwick Bill had died, and Bushwick Bill had come back. The very next day, Scarface and Willie D walked beside him as hospital staff rolled his bed down a hallway, his empty eye socket bandaged, his face swollen, his future uncertain. Someone snapped a photo. That photo became one of hip-hop's most iconic album covers, We Can't Be Stopped. Bill later said he regretted it. He was drugged, weak, hurting. They photographed his trauma, his confusion, his resurrection. But the world didn't see the wound. They saw a legend. And just weeks later, still healing, still aching, he delivered one of the greatest verses in rap history, On Mind Playing Tricks on Me. A verse written through trauma. A verse carved out of paranoia, violence, and fear. A verse that made millions feel seen. He had stared death in the face. Death blinked first. And yet, this was only one war in Bushwick Bill's life. The demons didn't disappear just because he survived the bullet. The darkness didn't leave just because he came back from the morgue. If anything, they followed him closer than ever. Because when you die and return, the world never feels the same. And neither did he. America didn't know what to do with a man who had literally died and come back. To the media, Bushwick Bill wasn't a miracle. He was a headline generator. A walking controversy. A living spectacle. The industry ate up the story. The dwarf rapper who got shot in the eye. They replayed the narrative again and again, never pausing to ask what kind of pain could push a man to hand someone a gun and beg them to take his life. They didn't see a wounded human being. They saw ratings, sound bites, shock value. He was hip-hop's wildcard, hip-hop's Frankenstein, hip-hop's cautionary tale, depending on who you asked. And yet, the Geto Boys kept rising. Mind Playing Tricks on Me climbed the charts, blasting out of car windows across America. Mental health wasn't a conversation back then. Not in rap, not in the black community, not in the streets. But Bushwick Bill had forced it onto the table long before the world was willing to discuss it. His verse was a confession disguised as a war story, and millions felt their own anxiety reflected back at them for the first time. But fame didn't fix him. The bullet didn't cleanse him. Resurrection didn't grant peace. The more the world celebrated Bushwick Bill the icon, The more Richard Shaw the man crumbled. Addiction stalked him like a shadow weed. Alcohol, pills, lean, powders, whatever could numb the noise. The scars around his missing eye healed on the outside, but inside, something stayed cracked. His guilt over the shooting, his unresolved trauma, the weight of survival, none of it left. Meanwhile, America loved the chaos, but ignored the cause. He appeared on The Chronic, on Martin, in films, at clubs, on endless tours. Every city had a wild Bushwick story. Every rapper had a memory. Every crowd wanted the legend, not the human. And yet through all this, he kept drifting back toward faith. The Bible he studied as a teenager never left him. He quoted scripture backstage. He prayed before shows. He argued theology on tour buses. He talked about demons, real ones, spiritual ones, the ones he saw in others, and the ones he wrestled alone. By the late 90s, disputes with labels, lawsuits, arrests, and addiction carved deeper lines in him. Friends watched him unravel one headline at a time. The South embraced him. Hip-hop respected him. But Bushwick was carrying a lifetime of bruises, spiritual, emotional, physical. The world loved Bushwick Bill, the character. But almost no one knew how to love Richard Shaw, the man. And as the years marched on, the storms inside him never truly calmed. They only waited for the next crack in the sky, the next collapse, the next fight between life and death. Bushwick Bill survived bullets, addiction, violence, fame, poverty, and even death itself. But the one enemy he couldn't outrun was time. By 2019, after a lifetime of chaos, redemption, rebellion, and resurrection, the doctors finally said the words no man wants to hear. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Terminal. The same man who once woke up in a morgue looked the world in the eye and said he wasn't afraid. How could he be? He'd already crossed to the other side and come back. Death wasn't a mystery to him, it was a neighbor he had already shaken hands with. But he was angry. Not at God. Not a fate. At the industry. At the way his diagnosis was turned into a marketing tool, a tour title, a farewell spectacle. Bushwick wanted to fight cancer his way, with honesty, rawness, and the same rebellious spirit he carried since the streets of Brooklyn. So he cancelled the reunion tour and created his own. Fuck cancer. 10% of every show would go toward other cancer patients. It wasn't about fame anymore. It was about purpose. But the disease moved faster than the tour dates could. By June, Bushwick Bill Richard Shaw ran out of tomorrows. On the 9th of June 2019, the world lost one of hip-hop's most unforgettable souls. Not a caricature, not a spectacle, not the crazy dwarf rapper. A man, a son, a father, a believer, a survivor who simply couldn't survive anymore. His death shook the hip-hop community because Bushwick wasn't just a rapper, he was a piece of cultural DNA. The Geto Boys didn't just make music, they changed the emotional language of hip-hop. They were the first to talk openly about psychosis, paranoia, depression, childhood trauma, spiritual warfare, decades before mental health became a hashtag. And no verse in rap history captures that pain more honestly than Bushwick Bill's final bars on Mind Playing Tricks on Me. He turned fear into poetry. He turned nightmares into art. He turned suffering into legacy. And that legacy still stands. To this day, documentaries are being developed. His book, Why Bushwick Bill Matters, is studied in classes. His son, Young Tane XW, continues the name. Scarface and Willie D still tell their stories. And hip-hop, Southern hip-hop, especially owes him a debt it can never repay. Bushwick Bill never wanted to be a legend. He wanted to be heard. He wanted to matter. He wanted to live long enough to rewrite his ending. He didn't get that chance. But what he did leave behind is a legacy too raw to erase, too honest to ignore, and too powerful to forget. Bushwick Bill didn't just cheat death once. He cheated obscurity forever. 52 years old. A wild soul. A broken genius. A pioneer. A miracle. Rest in peace, Bushwick Bill.